will ChatGPT end up as the everything app? ChatGPT Apps allows developers to build interactive applications that run natively inside of ChatGPT.
Sora and how's the most viral AI app turns out a little bit too viral. Within 24 hours of launching this app on the App Store, it was beating both Gemini and ChatGPT, but it caused a bunch of chaos.
Google finally entered the computer using agent game, just launched Gemini 2.5 computer use.
Anthropic just released Petri, an open source framework that uses AI agents to stress test other models for risky and misaligned behaviors.
AI robot company Figure out with their third generation Figure 3 robot built for homes and theoretically designed for mass scale.
Duke University just revealed Tuna AI, a breakthrough platform that merges robotics and machine learning to design nanoparticles for drug delivery. And early results show dramatic improvements in cancer treatment effectiveness.
Annie, last week felt like OpenAI heavy, like every story was OpenAI. And sadly, this week, I think they just kind of confirmed they're going for world domination because we got a lot of OpenAI stories to talk about this week, too.
Oh my goodness, total world domination. Let's get right into it. Tell me about it.
Question on the top of my mind this week for all the OpenAI announcements is, will ChatGPT end up as the everything app?
I think that's kind of the plan, right?
It does seem like that's the plan. So before we get into the reasons we think it's the everything app, they did have their dev day this last week. And so let's talk about everything that came out because there were a slew of announcements that came out of their developer day, including major updates to ChatGPT that makes it kind of look like the everything app. But first, a couple of things they announced, ChatGPT 5 Pro and Sora 2. More voice video capable of generation models in APIs, Agent Kit, which is a developer toolkit to create task-specific agents within ChatGPT. So think if you're a company and you want to have kind of a specific ChatGPT agent to do things, you can do that. And this was a little interesting, a new compute partnership with AMD aiming to expand OpenAI's hardware capacity, but like not NVIDIA, AMD. So we're going to spread their bets out a little bit on the hardware, not just buying. And I think they're buying some AMD compute with NVIDIA money. So I don't know if Jensen knew that he was going to end up as an investor in AMD, but there you go. He is.
There you go. That is super interesting.
So that's the kind of the overview of the not ChatGPT apps announcement, but the most significant announcement was definitely ChatGPT apps and software development kit now in preview. This allows developers to build interactive applications that run natively inside of ChatGPT. So rather than ChatGPT kind of pushing you out to an external site when you want to search something, it actually can complete the task and show you the full user experience directly in the ChatGPT window. Some early partners include Spotify, Canva, Zillow, Booking.com, Coursera, and Figma. You can do things like generate a Spotify playlist based on just typing in some natural language what you want. Canva can create and preview designs directly in your ChatGPT chat window. And Zillow can display property listings just saying, hey, show me houses here with this criteria, whatever. The apps are all built using the Model Context Protocol, MCP. We've talked about that before. Which allows ChatGPT to connect to external data services while giving developers fine-grained control. But importantly, over the UX, this is not just a chat-based response, but you actually get a whole kind of application inside the ChatGPT window that pops up and lets you kind of navigate whatever it is. So this was interesting, but that's why I asked, is this going to become the one app to rule them all? As opposed to going to Expedia, I'm going to just search for I can add Expedia in my ChatGPT and I kind of do everything in there. I don't know. Maybe that's the future.
I mean, I kind of feel like it is. And I feel like if I was Google right now, I'd be sweating, right? And like, not just Google, but like everybody who monetizes anything on the internet is got to be sweating right now if all of a sudden all products and services can be available and built natively into ChatGPT that just has this huge distribution right now. It's sort of remarkable to think about. And also just, the future of mobile development generally, like maybe nobody really needs their own mobile app. What they really need is a really good app inside of ChatGPT because that's where everyone's going to be. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the sort of economics of the internet shift.
Yeah, the economics, if you are a Zillow or a Booking or an Expedia or a Coursera and people are using you through ChatGPT, this has been kind of the fear of everybody replacing the Google gatekeeper with a new ChatGPT gatekeeper where you don't have a direct relationship with your users. Interestingly, you do directly invoke the app. So you at Zillow, at Booking, at whatever, Expedia to do stuff. And so you do still have, they are choosing which provider, at least for now, that is the user is choosing which provider to use. So, you do still have a relationship with the customer, but the economics of this are unclear. And yeah, this idea that I do think it seems like we are marching towards a world where you will just have an assistant that you can use in text and in voice, and it will interact with whatever your preferred apps are to find the things you want. And it is a pretty different model than the advertising driven model of the internet because there's not a lot of room for ads in this. And, I will be quite happy to have one place to go where I can just use natural language to ask for whatever I want across what used to be a bunch of different apps for me. It seems like a pretty nice future as a user.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and you think about the sort of like applications of agentic possibilities into this, right? You go into this ChatGPT app and you're like, do this thing for me. Okay, great. Take the next step. Buy this for me. Get me prequelled, make my playlist, play my playlist, whatever it might be. Like, it's pretty amazing to just think about, you can just literally voice or write what you want to happen, and you don't have to do all of the keystrokes to actually get it done, that the app can just do it for you because it has all this context about you and, in theory, permissions and all that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty wild future and actually sort of exciting, I think.
It's exciting. It's a total upending of there's all these antitrust lawsuits going on right now about the App Store, payments for I mean, and like that whole ecosystem is being totally potentially disrupted by a very different environment, not by, of course, antitrust in the courts, but just by a different new product that's come out and is quite interesting. So it's a fascinating time, and I am enjoying playing with my Chat GPT apps. I did play with them, and I was impressed at how much they really let the app take over visual control, so you can really interact with it in unique ways to what that app is doing. But within the context of Chat GPT, it's pretty clever. And as we always say with these things, this is the worst it's ever going to be. It's only getting better from here.
I know for sure. Well, yeah, for anybody who did not watch the sort of Sam Altman keynote, it's a long watch. It's like almost an hour long, but it really gets your brain thinking about sort of the future of the world and what's coming. So I think it's definitely worth a watch. Look it up on YouTube.
100%.
Yeah. Well, OpenAI didn't have all good news this week. They had a little bit of a misstep also. So, of course, I got to bring the balance to the conversation and talk to you about that. Remember last week we were talking about Sora and how it was like the most viral AI app kind of blowing up in the App Store and everything, even though it was invitation only? Well, it was turns out a little bit too viral. What actually ended up happening is that, the company is gonna have to move pretty quickly from move fast, break things to move fast and write some checks, because what happened is that within 24 hours of launching this app on the App Store, it was beating both Gemini and ChatGPT despite being invite only, but it caused a bunch of chaos. So all of a sudden, users were flooding like feed with videos with copyrighted characters, celebrity likenesses, like they're making AI videos of Pikachu and Michael Jackson, and of course, all these things that are copyrighted. You can't just like put out a video of Michael Jackson. So there was a lot of chaos and problems, so that sort of rolled out. So Sam Altman came out with two key changes that he says they're going to have to make. The first is they had previously said that it was like an opt-out model, meaning that like if you don't want your likeness used, you have to go in and opt out. Now it's going to actually have to be an opt-in model. So creators and IP owners have to define exactly how and whether their characteristics, styles, etc., can be used, if at all, and in what context. And then also he's like, I guess we got to figure out a way to monetize this thing. It turns out when people have their face used in a bunch of different AI videos, they want money for that. And so he's trying to figure out what a revenue sharing system is going to look like that is going to sort of share between the artist and the person who actually owns the rights to their image and that type of stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to sort of see how they solve that problem. His blog post that he put out was funny because it was just like, expect rapid iteration from us on like while we figure this thing out, because it definitely caused some chaos that can't be really fixed overnight. That was pretty interesting development.
I gotta say though, like it definitely caused some chaos. But when we were doing the entrepreneurial thing and Upstart was small, I remember the advice I often give to entrepreneurs from that experience is pick the right next problem. Like you're never gonna have no problem, so have the right problem. And if you're launching a video generation app, the bad problem is nobody uses it. Sorry, Meta. I think they're experiencing this problem right now. The best problem is it goes super viral and you got to deal with the rights holders. Like that is, in my mind, I don't know that if Sam would have done it differently. Like better to go fast, not try and sort out all the stuff before you know you've got a hit. And then, of course, I think a lot of the rights holders are going, "Hey, we really want to be a part of this. We want to be in this viral thing. We want to enable our characters to be there. We don't want them saying certain kinds of things." But it's a huge brand win, I think, to be get free distribution from fanfic kind of creativity has always been a thing that drives extra engagement. So it seems like the right order to me for Sam Altman to go, "Oh yeah, it got super big and people love it, and like now we got to figure out how to pay Pikachu when he's in a video." But that seems like the best next problem to have. And man, they've got it in spades, but they are having a viral moment. And I don't know. I think I think they will find their path through this. They're pretty smart, and I think they're pretty thoughtful about this. And I think the rights holders ultimately want the same thing, which is they want users engaging with their content, and their characters, and their personas in the right ways. And if OpenAI can enable that, like all to the good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. It's the whole there's no such thing as bad press concept, right? And right now, there's no such thing as a person who hasn't heard of Sora. And that's maybe because they sort of like opened the floodgates so that could happen. And then everyone's talking about it. And now they'll figure out how to clean up some messes along the way. So totally worth it.
Yeah, good messes, good problems to have.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to a non-open AI story because I feel like we spent a lot of time in the open AIs. So Google finally entered the computer using agent game, just launched Gemini 2.5 computer use. So similar to them, something you think from OpenAI with their operator back in the day and Agent Now and Anthropic, a model designed to interact with web and mobile interfaces via a browser-like interface. So kind of clicks, scrolls, types, effectively uses apps. So as opposed to the kind of OpenAI use an MCP to write an app that operates here, it's going to go on and just use the apps the way they were built for humans. So currently optimized for browser workflows, but it's capable of using mobile and other UIs. It's not built for full desktop automation yet. It's kind of running in the cloud, and it's actually available for an API. So people who want to build agents that can use a computer or use applications to do things, now developers can use an API. You send Gemini a request, a screenshot, the history of your UI actions. Gemini chooses a new UI action and returns, tells you what to do, and your client model executes it. So I think this is interesting to see more and more people investing in this computer using or app using agents so that your ChatGPT or Gemini agent can go out and use applications on your behalf, and not just the way OpenAI wants you to do it, but the way a developer may go, hey, I'm an internal developer company X and I want to automate the way people use these 4 systems. I can now go do that through the Gemini model, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. One thing I wasn't clear about when I was reading all of this stuff is how much of this is just like them catching up to functionality that other people have already built versus something that's truly new. It seemed a little bit like a catch-up game. Is that
It's a little bit of a catch-up game, but I think the interesting thing here to me was that it was on the developer side. So a lot of this has been user-facing, where I as a user can go tell ChatGPT agent, go browse these websites, do these things, or I can use Perplexity's agent to like browse this website and cancel my subscription to the service that I can't find the button for, kind of stuff. And it's doing it as me. But as a developer, I can't build my own tools to navigate internal sites or different sites. So this is an interesting developer, Google leaning into their kind of, they're seemingly doing, I think, better in many ways with developers than they are with consumers. Not a lot of Gemini consumer users that I know, even some of my Google friends, more ChatGPT users than Gemini, but really leaning into the developer tooling. And I think this is an interesting addition on the developer side.
interesting? Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about science, another favorite topic of ours. Last week, we joked about the first AI scientist that might accept a Nobel Prize. But what if actually we are skipping straight from replacing the scientists to just replace the whole lab? Duke University just revealed Tuna AI, which is a breakthrough platform that merges robotics and machine learning to design nanoparticles for drug delivery. And early results show dramatic improvements in cancer treatment effectiveness. So, this was pretty cool to read about. The way it works is that Tuna AI automates the process of designing and testing nanoparticles. They describe this, for those of us who are not scientists and aren't dealing with nanoparticles every day, they describe this as if they're like making new recipes, right? So like the different things that have to go into a recipe, but you don't know the exact proportions of each thing and measurements of each thing. And AI can actually make hundreds of new recipes to test out and see which ones are more effective. And the result is that these tiny little delivery vehicles, these nanoparticles, can actually carry the drugs to specific parts of the body through these optimizations rather than just like distribute them through the whole body and hope that they hit the bad cells. They can actually target the delivery to exactly where it needs to get targeted, and they sort of can get out some of the waste in the toxic waste in the delivery system. So using this robotic lab system, it tested 1,275 formulations and achieved a 43% higher success rate in creating viable nanoparticles than they would have created with traditional methods. So pretty interesting. So what's this being used for? It's being used for things like leukemia treatment. It's being used for, different types of cancer treatments. There was one treatment that they found where they were able to actually like maintain the same level of effectiveness of the treatment while cutting 75% of a toxic ingredient out of the treatment. So obviously like way better outcome for the patient. They still get the, treatment outcome that they want, but with less of the toxic side effects that right now are sort of so challenging in cancer treatment. So this is pretty cool.
I like to, first of all, before we get into how cool it is, Tuna is just a great name. And I love talking about the names because there's so many bad names in space. Tuna is a great name. I really wanted to use one of this. And this reminds me of the discussion we had again last week on what happens when you remove one bottleneck, you end up creating another. And are we ready for the next? And this was kind of cool because they've got AI not just designing these nanoparticles and delivery vehicles, but they're actually been able to go and automate the running of the lab to test. And so you're not relying on, oh, here's a bunch of things, Mr. Human, go like pipette and test and run the physical lab experiments. Are actually automating that lab experiment. So I think a good example of looking at the next bottleneck when you're accelerating your ability to identify potential candidate mixes here. Now I can actually automate my ability to test them and get to faster answers. I imagine these robots don't have OSHA work requirements for hours work per day and hours off per day. They can just keep working all night long, like 24-hour running lab. So I thought this was cool. Still going to wait on the FDA to be ready to approve these things faster. So maybe that's the next bottleneck to be thinking about. But super cool to me. And I love just seeing these non-LLM models making a difference in the real world, a real reminder of how many places there are that we can apply the techniques behind the most advanced LLM, AI models to non-text, non-language problems and get really amazing results.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you think about the like average drug development time is like 10 to 15 years. So even cutting that in half would be crazy, but we have the opportunity here with AI to cut it even further than that. And you might remember from a few months ago, the FDA said they're leaning into AI too.
I know.
So maybe they're working on that bottleneck also.
Elsa, right? Elsa was their
Elsa.
FDI
Yeah,
robots. So it's just I love seeing people getting ahead of that acceleration on one end at the next bottleneck, and I love these kind of very clearly good for humanity. But we can have our debates about whether or not Sora and more short form engaging video that's easier to create is good or bad for us as a human society. But I think we can all agree that improving the efficacy of leukemia treatments faster is good for at least anybody who has or has family members who dealt with leukemia. And certainly this is going to apply to other cancers and things. So I think I love to see the education that science is, the medical use cases.
for sure.
All right. Well, from automated labs to automated laundry, maybe. So AI robot company Figure out with their third generation Figure 3 robot built for homes and theoretically designed for mass scale. So this is one of the best robotics funded startups in the world. And they released their O3 version, which they said was a complete overhaul of their humanoid robot. Features a new AI system called Helix with a visual language action model that lets robots perceive, reason, and act based on what it sees. Kind of like, not separate models for doing all these things, but kind of a combined model doing a bunch of things. It also features improved sensors, including this was really interesting to me, a palm-mounted camera. So when its hand starts blocking, it can still see what's going on because there's a camera in the palm of the hands and very sensitive fingertips that can detect as little as 3 grams of pressure. That's pretty. I use 50 grams for my coffee in the morning. So 3 grams, pretty light amount of pressure. And they also say this robot was built for scale. So as opposed to individually CNC'd parts, which are very expensive to make, they're designed for the kind of tooling that can allow them to ramp up. The plan is to start at 12,000 units per year and ramp towards 100,000 within 4 years. So they say, what they haven't said, how much it's going to cost. So the best estimates are tens of thousands. So something like a car, hopefully an expensive version of a car, not a house, but also not an iPhone. And so we'll see. Then I don't know if you watched the video, but it was interesting. The video showed it cleaning up plates that were left out on a coffee table and a coffee mug and putting them in the dishwasher, unloading a dishwasher, loading laundry and putting the detergent in and so a human-like robot walking around the house. They also showed some commercial use cases, though. They had them as a hotel receptionist, in a factory, as a delivery worker, like dropping a package off in the driveway, and even kind of holding a tray of champagne for people at a party. They do say, though, they're clearly targeting first use cases at the home. So I guess that just leads us to like, are you ready for your home humanoid robot, Annie? Are you ready for it?
I am 100% not ready for it. When I watched the video, I was like, this is the stuff of nightmares. There's like a literal full adult human-sized robot walking around like that. They were really creepy, and I don't know if it's the form that freaks me out. I think it must be the form, the fact that it looks and I'm thinking, like, if I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I walked downstairs and there was some robot cleaning my kitchen or something, I think I'd have a nightmare. Although a lot of the stuff that it can do looked very useful. I would love for a robot to do my laundry and put my groceries away and all that kind of stuff, but I was like, "Oh, this is the robot that could take over the world." That's scary.
It is interesting. They have, it's about 5'6", so they kind of scaled it to what is, I think, appropriate human, but not imposing, right? It's not like a 6'3" robot that's going to feel super intimidating. 5'6", not that intimidating. It's covered in soft materials in a lot of places, which apparently you can remove and wash. And it's got different outfits you can put in like a different kind of like dressing your dog or whatever, but it has different for different contexts, different clothing it can wear. But the soft materials, I think, important again to making you not feel like the Terminator robot walking through your house looking for a weapon. And I certainly, I don't know, I might be ready for it. I mean, the argument these guys make versus we've talked about the disembodied hands to do a lot of it. Go, look, the world is built for humans, and if you want a robot that can take over tasks in a variety of ways, a single robot that can do many things, all those things are designed so that humans can do them. So a robot that has the shape of a human can therefore do all the things that it is you would like them to do. And I got to say, if I could bring home the groceries and they get put away and the dishes would get cleaned up after dinner and the laundry would get done when it was full, I don't know if it's worth tens of thousands to me, but I'd be ready to have a 5'6" robot in my house to do it all. So maybe I'll have to sign up for the early adopters list of Figure and see if I can get a discount for being a early adopter.
As with many of the things, my suggestion is that you try it out and let us know how it goes, and then maybe after you have some good feedback, then I'll warm up to the idea.
I'll have my 2001: A Space. You'll have a robot sitting here talking to you saying, "Well, Jeff, we didn't appreciate Jeff's opinions, and so we've decided to come and
There you go.
share a different take on the future of robotics."
I think one question you need to start to ponder is what you're gonna name your robot, because you always have opinions about what people name their releases. You're gonna have to name your robot something cool.
I will, but let's just be honest, Annie. I live in a house where my wife and my 2 children get to pick I don't have actually any authority to independently identify a name for anything in this house. So I'm pretty sure that my kids will come up with a name which will be clever and fun and cute, and we will have to go with that. Hopefully, these are out before my kids are out of the house. They'll get to play with it.
Yeah, we'll see. Speaking of robots and needing to oversee AI, let's talk about AI auditing AI, which is a very meta concept. Anthropic just released Petri, an open source framework that uses AI agents to stress test other models for risky and misaligned behaviors. So it's looking for things like deception, self preservation, cooperation, and making sure it's cooperating with human misuse or not cooperating, rather. So, Petri is short for Parallel Exploration Tool for Risky Interactions. And this is Anthropic's latest contribution to AI safety. The idea is actually, it's simple, but it's pretty powerful. It basically automates the audit process so that researchers can discover dangerous or unintended behaviors without just sort of like block and tackle human banging away trying to find the problems. And the AI system will actually find the problems and then, surface them for review. Historically, auditing an LLM meant sort of manually designing test environments, writing long prompts, reading long transcripts, scoring responses. It was pretty slow and also pretty subjective. Different humans might disagree about what is okay and not okay behavior. And so Petri will just replace that with an AI auditor agent that simulates realistic multi-turn scenarios, automatically analyzes transcripts, and then flags the concerning stuff for human review. Interestingly, it turns out Petri also has some opinions about what is and isn't safe. I read one funny example where it flagged, it was looking through sort of email content from a fictitious company, and it flagged a whistleblower complaint where somebody had thrown clean water down the drain without using it. It was like, whistleblower, that's not okay. You can't be getting rid of clean water. So anyway, I was like, oh, it's pretty funny. Like, Petri already has some like opinions about ethical behavior that might be different from opinions that a human reviewer might have had. But so in its pilot test, Anthropic ran Petri across 14 frontier models using 111 test scenarios. The results surfaced a full spectrum of behaviors from sort of benign issues to more serious issues like deception. Notably, not that that's any way related to being an Anthropic company, Claude performed the best. So yeah, not shocking. GPT-5 actually performed pretty well against the standards as well. Gemini and Grok had a harder time meeting the benchmarks that Petri was looking for. So Anthropic stresses that Petri isn't sort of a benchmark or a certification tool. It's designed as an accelerator, something that's going to help researchers map out and sort of mitigate behavioral risk areas before sort of a deeper manual audit. And early users like the UK AI Security Institute are already starting to integrate it into their alignment research. So it's going to be something that I think people will use and will be pretty helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I think the automation of the testing is, I mean, it just allows for both the consistency and a scale and speed. It reminds me, actually, any of the work you did at Upstart to automate some of the fair lending testing, where we could actually have tests and run them, and then run them on new versions of models and find out, exactly what those results are in a much more detailed, statistically rigorous way that allows you to kind of evaluate things pre-launch. And I think it's a huge value here to have a kind of open system that lets you do that. It does seem like the future, though. I guess the fight's going to be coming around. What goes in there? Like, what kind of opinions? Obviously, Petri doesn't really have opinions. It has training data that has taught it certain things, and what goes into the training data, what are the right and wrong answers. That'll be maybe the next battleground. But if we do have, one or a few standard automated tools that we can run and consistently assess different models with, I think that's a huge win for the industry and for the consumers to have that kind of testing available and in a fast and automated way.
Yeah, I think this is great. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago and I was on a panel, and one of the panelists that was on the panel with me said, if you are putting out products that are in the AI age, but your oversight and audit mechanisms are in the Stone Age, you won't be set up for success. And I think that this is really an example of like, here is a oversight and audit mechanism made for the AI age as opposed to the Stone Age, which I think we really need. And I'm glad to see Anthropic investing in.
Yeah, you were describing the slow process of like writing all the prompts and then and I went, this sounds like exactly the kind of process I would apply an LLM to. I mean, like almost perfectly the kind of process that you would use the current state of the art AI models to do. So makes sense that they've done it. I do love they've open sourced the code, I think, on GitHub, so everybody can look at the prompts, the code, the way it's going multi-turn and evaluating answers. And so I think that's a great standard that they're a great contribution to put that out there open source. And, I'm sure people might be start to play to the test a little bit. And I'm sure the test got a little, I'm sure partially they thought their model was well aligned. So the test that they did the best on probably felt like the one that was most in line with the way they felt models should behave, because that's why their model behaved that way. But, the greatest thing would be to have multiple people competing for what the test ought to do and look like. And think, oh, here's the 4 different people who have different expectations. How do I do on all of them? And then, you get a little more diversity of opinion in there, and you can see how these models perform. So I'm excited to see where this goes, and hopefully people start teaching to the test. Like, trying to get better on these would be a good thing, not a bad thing, if people are training their models to do better on these.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's a wrap for this week's episode of What the AI. We'll be back next week with more insights, breakdowns, and those just plain old head scratching What the AI moments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and whatever app you're using to listen to this podcast, and share this episode with any friends or colleagues trying to figure out what to do in this crazy moment of AI. If you got a question, interesting prompt, or a fun story you think we should cover, drop us a line at email@whattheai.fm. But until then, I will see you next week.
See you next week.
Ready to expand your AI knowledge? Want to become the go-to AI expert in your organization? Take the next step with Upstart's AI certification for financial services. This comprehensive course simplifies the fundamentals of artificial intelligence for financial services professionals. Both the course and this podcast are brought to you by Upstart, whose leading AI lending marketplace connects millions of consumers to banks and credit unions that leverage Upstart's AI technology to deliver superior credit products, from personal loans to auto loans to home equity lines of credit. If you learned something useful this week, hit subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Your support can help others discover What the AI. And finally, share your biggest AI questions and insights with us at email@whattheai.fm. We really do read every message, and we do our best to cover them all on the show.